Yes,
Yeah, thank you.
definitely
Okay.
yes.
So once again, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Selamat siang semuanya. So I've been asked to talk about the social dimension of sustainable architecture. But I guess before we talk about the social dimension of sustainable architecture, it would be worth talking about what is sustainable architecture. Now, I believe, particularly those of you who are in the class with OVA in Arsitektur Berkelanjutan, I believe you would have talked about sustainable architecture. So if you want to jump in and talk about it, please just go ahead and do that. So often when we are presented with this image, we often then say straight away, oh yeah, that's a sustainable architecture. So this building, for example, is, anybody knows what building it is? Anybody wants to jump in and say what it is? What building? Where? Have you ever seen it?
NTU library.
Sorry?
NTU library, Prof.
That's correct. Yeah, that's right. So it's the Nanyang Technological University in Singapore, and it's got, you know, sweeping green roof and, you know, other things that they claim they have. Anybody knows what building this one is? Again, often this building is used as an image to talk about sustainable architecture. Anybody knows? Ever seen it? I mean, if you look at the URL down there, you probably can Google it very quickly. This is One Central Park in Sydney. Again, it's often claimed as one of the greenest buildings in Australia. It's got these green walls, and it has this something called heliostat, the reflector that they claimed to reflect sunlight, so everybody in the building would receive direct sun. However, when I look at this building, I wonder, you know, what happened with people on the other side, or, you know, how much energy is used to build this building and to build the structure? Is that really sustainable? Is it sustainable? Anybody wants to argue it is yes or no? All right, let's just continue. Is that really a sustainable architecture? Well, I guess I do want to ask, is that really a sustainable architecture? I'm not sure what happened there with my, okay, there you go. Is that a sustainable architecture? What is sustainable architecture? Well, I think talking about sustainable architecture cannot be separated from the word sustainable development, which I'm sure most of you also have known about. And I don't want to go back to talk about the history of that, which I'm sure everybody would have known by now. But I just like to use the term sustainable development that is often quoted. And that is, I guess, the most official term or definition of sustainable development, which is the ability to meet the present needs without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their needs. So, you know, you make sure that the development would provide a continuing or continuation, so that future generation can also enjoy what we now enjoy to meet their own needs. And you all know that in sustainable, what the term sustainability and sustainable development is not just about the environment, despite the fact that that's probably one of the most quoted or one of the most aspects that we understand about sustainability. Is about the to ensure that the environment maintain its ecosystem integrity, so that it can continue to have carrying capacity, to make sure that people continue to have access to resources and so on, and it maintains biodiversity. So those are some of the aspects of environmental sustainability. The second dimension of sustainability is the economic side. So economic sustainability is ensuring that we continue to have growth, that countries continue to grow, continue to develop, have productivity, maintain efficiency, and continue to produce employment or to allow employment. So people have jobs and have income and continue to live have access to resources, and so on. So that sustainable development is basically a development that ensures that not only the environment is sustainable, but with sustainable environment, it allows the economy to continue to grow and produce and so on. But on the other side, don't forget that sustainable development really started off as a social issue. Uh, if you read the history, it started off by developing countries or developed countries complaining or expressing their concern to the developed countries for taking most of the resources, continue to have economic growth, and leaving behind countries that have less access to resources, that have less access to the economy, and they continue to be poor. So there's a really divide between the wealth and people who are poor or in poorer countries. So social sustainability is really about ensuring equity, accessibility, social cohesion, that people feel empowered, and ensuring that cultural identity is maintained and is fostered. Now, in a sustainable development, these three things need to happen. It's not just about environment, it's not just about society, it's not about economy, because they all interlink. If the environment is not healthy, it affects the economy, and the environment is not healthy, it affects the people. If people is not healthy, it affects the economy, and the circle just continues. So in this context, I would say that sustainable architecture is an architecture that maintains and improves the quality of life of the current users, the people, without negatively impacting the environment, so that future users can continue to live sustainably, which also allow the economy to sustain, or with allowing the economy to sustain, the future users will continue to live as well. Now, there's another term or definition that was offered by some of my colleagues here. Terry Williamson, Anthony Radford, Helen Bennett wrote this book, Understanding Sustainable Architecture. The book is still available online if you like to have a look. One of the things that they said is, in this context, sustainable architecture is a creative adaptation to ecological, sociocultural, and context. The context is the place, which includes the economic context, and it needs to be in that order of priority. So the environment, the society, and the economy, which is supported by credible arguments. What it means is, as an architect, if you're presented with the same problem, you might come up with different answer to other architects. But as long as you have credible arguments to respond, to adapt to the ecological, sociocultural, and contextual problems, then hopefully, either, your architecture or other architecture will still be considered sustainable, as long as it maintains this balance between the three aspects of that. But it is still a creative adaptation, so you have to be still creative to create sustainable architecture. So again, please stop me if you have any question. But what we're going to talk about today is not about the environment, it's not about the economy, it's mostly about the social aspect of sustainability. But before I continue, I also like to draw attention to something called the Hanover Principles. It's written, and I brought it up because it is written by an architect and an engineer, architect/engineer, Willie McDonald and Michael Brogan, who were assigned to come up with the idea for the Expo 2000. And while they're doing that, they come up with these Hanover Principles, which was then presented to the convention in Rio on sustainability. So the principles that they propose in designing for sustainability, first is that there is coexistence between humanity and nature. So humanity and nature coexist, or needs to coexist, in a healthy, supportive, diverse, and sustainable condition. it recognizes there's in the interdependence between humanity and nature, between people and nature. And it recognizes even distant effects. So what you do today would affect what could happen tomorrow and in the future. What you do in the nature can affect humanity. What you do in humanity would affect nature. They both depend upon each other. And the principle also emphasizes the important relationship between spirit and matter, between things that you can touch and see and things that is inside you, that is the spirit, that is behind it. There is sort of the intangible and the tangible matters for any kind of human settlements, not just a house, not just office, not just public spaces. In any places, any spaces, any buildings that we design, there must be a relationship between the spirit and the matter. And it also emphasizes the responsibility of the consequences of design decisions upon human well-being, upon natural systems, and they both coexist. So again, you cannot talk about environment without talking about the people. And it is really important to understand that there's always this relationship. And in doing that, we need to create safe objects. And again, that could be buildings, that could be, you know, outdoor space that is safe, that can last for in the long term, not just today. And in doing that, they emphasize in eliminating, erasing the concept of waste. There is no such thing as waste. If you create waste, you need to be able to add value to it, to reuse it and continue the lifetime of that matters, so it continue in the long run. And always rely on natural flows. And the 7 and 8 is related. Understand the limitation of design. And I think the next few sentences are really important. Practice humility in the face of nature. Don't think that we can control nature. Treat nature as a model and a mentor, not an inconvenience to be evaded or controlled. Meaning, for example, okay, Jakarta is hot. Indonesia in general is hot, humid. So to make us feel cool, as you know, and you probably all live in a house that has some air conditioning. So you put air conditioning, so you try to control the environment. Well, I think you can only control the environment to a certain extent, because to cool a space, what you do is what we do with air conditioning. You extract the heat from the space, and then you bring in cool air by, you know, the refrigeration system or whatever it is. You condition the air, you bring in cool air. But energy doesn't go away. The heat doesn't go away. You take it out from the building, you throw it outside, and it doesn't go away. The natural flow continues. It's not gonna disappear. So as a result, our outdoor environment gets warmer. And then what you do is you keep pumping the hot air from inside, you pump it outside, and the circle continues, and then the outside is hotter, the building gets hotter, so you put in more cool air by extracting hot air. So again, we just cannot stop that natural flow. But if we rely on natural flows, maybe our thinking would be different. Maybe that's not how we should cool the building. If we know how natural flows are occurring, the design should adapt to that. And that's basically some example what to say about the number 8. And finally, 6, constant improvement by sharing the knowledge. So once you get the knowledge, you share it so that the knowledge is understood by the current generation, and it will continue to be passed on to the future generation. And I just read a few things here from the Hanover Principles, and you can read it again online. The book is, the whole thing is PDF online, you can get it. And this is really important, I think. Concern for sustainability is more than a matter of compliance with industrial regulation or environmental impact analysis. So it's more than just about green buildings, more than just about environmental impact. It embraces a commitment to conceive of the work of design as part of a wider context in time and place. And this next paragraph, I think, is really important. To present the message of the value of all life and the rightful human place. As part of this, people must be able to experience the feeling of belonging to the earth firsthand. So really, in the context of sustainable architecture, it's not just about the thing that we design. It's not about the matter that we design. It's more than that. It's about the relationship with the spirit. It's the relationship with the people. Hence, what we're going to talk about today is really about this, in this context, is the importance of understanding the social aspect of sustainability. He then put this matrix, which you can read it, but I guess what is important to look at this relationship between his matrix with the three aspects of sustainability. I think in a way it's calling the same thing. So this is about the environment, that's about the people, and that's about profit or the economy. So with the planet, you understand you need to model nature, you understand nature and energy flows. About people is about improving quality of life and sharing the knowledge, but between people and planet, make sure that there is human nature is coexisting and that people accept responsibility to make sure the planet continues to operate and continue to provide life for people in the future. And then it can recognizing the importance of, he call it profits, creating values, he call it economic values, but also other type of values. But importantly, in doing so, don't forget that we need to eliminate waste. Don't just putting waste, because that means you reduce the value of whatever it is that you design. So my take on that, in terms of the social sustainability in sustainable architecture, I think there's a lot of dimensions. If you look at the literature, some people would say there's 4 dimensions, some people would say 5. Well, to be honest, I can't reduce that. I think there's a lot of aspects that we need to look at when we talk about social dimensions. So again, human nature is coexisting. We need to consider equity, that people are equal. At the same time, they're diverse, so recognizing differences to make sure that we allow participation, to ensure that people feel empowered and they feel social cohesion among people. I think probably I should swap this quality of life to make sure that everybody would have quality of life, feel secure, recognizing that there are cultural differences. So I'm gonna show a few slides, few images to describe or to explain this. Again, please feel free to jump in and to interject what I'm talking about. So once again, often as an architect or architecture students, when we were asked to design sustainable architecture, and you look at in literature, in books, papers, a lot of times this is what you see. So the depiction of sustainable building is often by listing all the features to make the building sustainable. However, as you can see here, really, this is mostly addressing only the environmental sustainability. So on the top left side, strategies to include natural light, to include natural ventilation, having stack effect. Depending on the climate, you put thermal mass to absorb the heat and release the heat for, let's say, in the winter season. It's probably not very relevant in Indonesia. You use passive chilled system to help cool the building. So using cooling system with a very high temperature to reduce energy. And then you collect rainwater, you use phase change material, and so on and so forth. And Ibu Ova probably is going to go through this in your classes in the next few weeks. Solar hot water, collecting solar radiation, converting into electricity. And this is probably more relevant in the tropics, using trees for shading, having natural ventilation, and so on and so forth. So all of these are often what we look at. But again, when we talk about social sustainability, I don't think it's enough to do all of this. or just to do all these. Perhaps some aspect that relate to social aspect, perhaps in terms of improving quality of life, having access to sun, having access to natural light and fresh air probably is included in this. But as we already talked about the 8 dimensions, there are more aspects in terms of achieving social sustainability. This image, I took it from a place in Northern Territory in Australia, in a place called Ubir. I just want to depict the first aspect of social sustainability, as I mentioned, is recognizing this coexistence between human and nature. And when I was there, I read this poetry that was written by Bill Nighy. Bill Nighy is one of the elders, like Sesepuh, in the indigenous Australian community in Northern Territory. So, and I don't think this is anything different than many of the understanding of our own in Indonesia, indigenous people, recognizing the relationship between people and nature. And let me just read it. It says, "This ground and this earth, like brother and mother." So imagine that he understands or he feels that the earth is like his mother. It's not separated. It's not just, you know, that's the environment, that's me. It's about his relation with his mother, which must be very close. We like this earth to sing because he's staying forever and ever. It is about sustainability. It's about making sure that the earth would last for the future generation. And therefore, he said, we don't want to lose him. We say, sacred, leave him alone, you know, or go with them. Don't try to destroy it. He understands that people cannot exist without allowing nature, allowing the earth to continue to exist. We need to look after it. And it just understanding that relationship, I think is really, really important. That yes, we're talking about the environment, but the environment exists for people, and people can only exist because we look after the environment. The second aspect of the social dimension is recognition of various groups. Often as an architect, and maybe once you design, when you finish studying and you become an architect, often we do projects because we got clients, and very often, not always, very often the clients are those who have money, those who, you know, want to develop something, and fair enough, you know, that's often the case. But don't forget that in society, it's not just about people who have money. There are men as well as women. There are kids, there are older people, there are people who are vulnerable, those who are very old, who may not be able to walk anymore, or people who are having what we call disabled body, you know, orang cacat, or people who are sick. And we need to recognize that we don't design for just one particular type of groups in society, that we need to recognize that there are differences. And often as a designers, this is what we like to see, you know, this is what I like to imagine. And I'm sure some of you have seen this image. We like to see building in a beautiful environment, you know, serene beach and so on, where in fact, the reality might actually be like this. And well, while this image is not from Indonesia, it's actually not that different than what we see, for example, in Jakarta. This is probably what we like to focus on, yet in reality, this is what we have. So how do we ensure that there are different people living in the same community that we also need to consider? Realizing that we're not just designing for this group, but there's impact on this group as well. So my take on this is as a reminder to myself as well that really we don't just need to do environmental assessment when we design, but we need to look at the social impact assessment as well. Maybe we could ask ourselves, how do we design so that what's the impact, what's the effect of our design to the surrounding? And what by surrounding is not just the immediate surrounding, around this masjid. What happened beyond that, beyond this little river? How would you consider the locals, not just now, but in the long-term operation? Would you consider, using something or specifying something into the building, materials, technology that is actually relying on the local employment, using local materials, rather than, we look at these cool materials and say, oh, let's just use that, and it's, whatever, granite from Italy or something like that. Why can't we use local materials? Why couldn't we encourage the locals to contribute to the building that we design? And once again, how would the design actually contribute to the surrounding, not just affecting the surrounding, but contribute to the surrounding, add values to the surrounding? And I just want to, this is an old design, old building, finished in 1984, before most of you were born, but I guess that's one of my favorite buildings in terms of the social aspect of architecture. Although at the time it wasn't done in the context of social sustainability as we call it now, but I think what they've done then, it was addressing social sustainability. So this Neue Stadt Gallery in Stuttgart, it's a new gallery. It's an extension of an old gallery. So people enter from this main rolling door, or doors that roll around. And also, if I just click, so that's the main entrance. So that's the context. That's the new building. That's the old building. There are garden, city garden, and opera building, gymnasium, and so on. Oh, so this is the other side of the building. So the building, the entrance that we saw before was from that side. This is the other side. So let me just flick quickly. So that's the green window that we see. Anyway, inside the building, there is this a courtyard where people from inside can go outside and enjoy this gallery. Enjoy the sculptures, the courtyard, and so on. So why is this building so important in this context? Well, if you look at here, there's actually like a walkway where people can also see the sculpture from up here. But these people who go up here are not people who come to the museum. They just passerby. They're people from the surrounding neighborhood. So when the building was designed, okay, people used to walk from this side, or if I just flick back here, from this side to that side, to the park, to other facilities, and so on. So this is a thoroughfare. So when they designed this, of course, people complain and they said, oh, you're blocking, my path. So what the architect did was actually quite clever. So what they did was people can still go through the side, go up the steps, and there's also, I believe, a lift. They can go up the step and go around. They can look down to this courtyard going up here, but they never interact with people who pay. So they can't go inside the art gallery because they don't pay, but they can still enjoy the gallery and feel that they're part of this new development, and they can continue their journey. They can go this way, or there's also other thoroughfare there. Or if they decide, oh, I want to pay, I want to go inside, then of course from here they just go back to the plaza that we saw here. Okay, here. So they basically come up there, and then they can go back here. But if they don't want to, they just continue their journey. And I think such example I think it's a great lesson that we can incorporate the surroundings and incorporate or make or give benefits to people around the development, around the building that we design, without, sacrificing people who are coming here, which means, people who pay are not going to say, oh, how come these people come for free? No, they never go inside, but they can still see it. And people who are here also every morning can enjoy the view, enjoy the scenery of this art gallery. So again, people inside, they just stay here and they can go around the courtyard, but they cannot go outside. So they can't interact. So again, so that's the I think clearly now. So you can see on Google, that's how they go. They go around here and they go out here, whereas other people go through there. As an example. The next one is about ensuring quality of life. And this is not just about quality of life indoor, it's outdoor. And it's not just for a particular group of people, as you can see in this depiction on this image, this beautiful old lady, she's probably not coming from a very well-off background, but hey, she can still enjoy life and she can do selfie, which I thought is really cool. So what are the aspects of quality of life? There are many aspects. Quality of life is determined by mental and physical health, and I think we all relate to this, particularly right now with COVID. I think COVID does affect the physical health of many people, but it affects a lot more people in terms of their mental health. Many of us are locked inside the house. We can't go out easily. And if we're not strong enough, it can affect our mental health. So how does our built environment contribute to this? I'm not sure if some of you started rearranging your bedroom because you have to be in your bedroom more often, or maybe cleaning the house more often because you think it's really important to be in a cleaner environment because it affects your physical health. So there is a lot of interaction between the built environment, the matters, and the spirit and the mental health. Quality of life also is affected by or determined by whether or not we can have social relationships. If we feel isolated, it can affect our quality of life. Again, the built environment can affect whether or not people can have social relationships. It's about personal safety, the feeling of, feeling safe, feeling secure can affect the quality of life. Emotional well-being, our emotion or how our ability to control our emotion can affect our quality of life. And whether or not we have a sense of belonging, it can affect our quality of life. If you feel like you can't rely on anybody, it can affect our quality of life, our happiness. If you feel you can rely on somebody or you can relate to friends, relate to family, relate to a certain people in the community, I think it can help improve the quality of life. Financial, material well-being also affect our quality of life, although not all. Not everybody needs a lot of money, but everybody does need money to just survive and to live. And if you don't have enough, it can affect our quality of life. The ability to study and work does affect our quality of life. I'm sure all of you are feeling it right now. I'm sure you can study. I'm sure you can work, although you do it in a long distance way. But somewhat it might affect the quality of work you do or affect your quality of life in general. And of course, the quality of the environment itself, then I guess in this context, in the context of architecture, it can affect all of this. And this is our role as a designer to help people to maintain their quality of life through designing a quality environment. So what can we do as a designer? And this is just some of these, and you can go, and the list can go on. Space layout, for example, can affect the feeling of safety, can affect the feeling of spaciousness. It could affect our emotional well-being. Imagine if you're in a cramped space, very condensed space, you probably can get angry very quickly. Although some people might say, oh, I feel really cozy and secure when you feel in a small environment. So it really depends. Access to natural light, I'm sure we all relate to this. I think Budoti before just said, you know, with this Zoom meeting, you keep looking at the screen and can bother your eyes. But perhaps what we need to do is stop and look at the window and looking at greeneries, get the natural light. Uh, it affects our mental well-being and also health, obviously. Having access to natural light, for example, help our sleep pattern as well, as you know. If you never see the light, um, I think it can mess up your biological system. That's why there is a certain hormone that would, when it triggers by light, it makes our body more active. And then at nighttime, the serotonin or melatonin level will go higher, and then that would make us fall asleep and so on. But you do need to have that access to natural light. So it impacts our well-being as well. Access to fresh air, particularly in the context of right now, COVID. I think there's a lot more research needs to be done on this, particularly I'm not 100% sure about Indonesia. In the context of Australia, there's a lot of cases of COVID and fatality in nursing homes. And a lot of nursing homes, not only because the people are older, so they're more vulnerable, but also most buildings, most nursing homes here are in air-conditioned buildings. So all windows are closed, no access to fresh air. So as you know, with the airborne, not just, as you know, COVID is not droplet. It's not just droplet, it's airborne as well. When you don't have fresh air to replace that, it's just so easy to get contaminated air. So access to fresh air is not only important to feel good, but it is very important for your health well-being as well. So promoting indoor-outdoor relationship through openings, through allowing people, occupants to be able to go out or even look out. That's all design problems. These are all design issues. Non-toxic materials, improving indoor air quality, therefore improving well-being. As you know, you must have learned this from first year, color, scale, proportion, this matters. Making sure that spaces are usable and accessible matters. It affects our ability to use space. It affects our emotional well-being. It affects our feeling of feeling secure and safe and so on. The next aspect of social dimension, let me know if I'm a bit too slow here, participation. So as I already mentioned, make sure we include not just your client, we talk to the team, but also, I guess, people outside the team, outside the people where we design the building for, the surrounding neighborhood, as I mentioned, because that help social cohesion, not just the occupants of the building that you design, but also with the neighbors. Also, don't forget, and this image, I took it in Venice Biennale in Venice in 2016. This was one of the displays in the Polish pavilion, so the pavilion of the architects from Poland. It's probably a bit hard for you to see, but once you get the recording of this, if this is recorded, or I'd be happy to send you the PowerPoint, you can zoom it in. So basically, this is a section of a real building showing the number of people involved in making this building. And often, if a building is successful, or whether it's called a green building, often who got recognized are the owner, the developers, and the design team, the architect. Like what I said before, well, that gallery is designed by James Sterling, so he got recognized. But who did not get recognized? The people who actually make the buildings or the building, all the workers. We rarely think about the workers. Honestly, when I was working as an architect, I probably only ever talked to one of the workers or two or three of the workers occasionally. I don't always talk to them. Yet they're the ones who actually make the building. So this is showing the number of people on the left-hand side that dig the site. So excavation, dig the trenches, dig the site. These are people who are involved in the structures, These are people who started to be involved in, what was that? So this is the structure people. And then this is the people who are involved in the building facade. And these are people who are involved in finishing, all the finishes and painting and everything. But they don't get recognized. Yet they're the ones who make the building happen. And often some of these people have accidents. A lot of projects, the workers died. They had accidents. Yeah, as an architect, we don't talk to them. And maybe they died because our design is so difficult to do that we don't think about how they have to be constructed. And we design this really cool detail, sharp angle, which makes it so hard to do. And we forgot that somebody has to build it and we don't talk to them. So I think that's the other aspect of social sustainability, is recognizing this other part of the development. The next aspect in social sustainability is ensuring safety and security. Now, I just put this image not to say that safety and security is only depicted by light or could happen with lighting. So this is actually the opposite. As a matter of fact, I did a study several years ago, 3 years ago now, looking at how people feel safe in the built environment, in urban environment. And often as designers, this is what we look at, right? Beautiful facade, having people, this area particularly have a lot of cafes, and this is what we look at. We forgot behind the buildings are things like these, the ones underneath. Spaces in between buildings that nobody go to because it looks so scary, because we don't design it well. We don't provide any activity behind it. Despite the fact there could be lighting, but it's dead space and nobody wants to go there. And when nobody wants to go there, that's when crime could happen. And the more crime happening, the more people not going to don't want to go there, and that space just becomes more and more unattractive and left behind. And it just make you even more and more feeling unsafe. So really, it's not lighting that make people feel safe. What we found in our study is the presence of people. So again, the importance of creating space for people that make people comfortable to be in there. And by doing so, it actually even attract more people to be in there, and they feel safer. So the design itself can help people feel safe, but if you look at this, if you don't put activity, if you don't design something to bring people here, then it's not going to help. It's going to make people feel less safe. The other part of safe, so that safe relates more in terms of security. The other part of safe is safety in terms of don't have accident. As a designer, as an architect, we tend to design with younger people in mind, with people who have able body. But don't forget, as we talked about diversity before, there are a portion of people in society, they are getting older, or they're vulnerable, or they're unable to walk easily. In Australia, the percentage of older people, so people who are 65 and above, is getting higher and higher. So the expectation is in 2050, I think, 1/4, 25% of the population are going to be 65 and above. And with age, I'm not saying that all older people are unable to walk. I mean, we see Budoti was very, very healthy and very active, Pak Emir, very active, and so on. But there are, the older we get, as we all know, the higher the likelihood we have mobility, health issues, and so on. So yes, of course, we design a building with beautiful staircases, and the staircases, of course, is good because they make us healthy, pump our heart, and we have healthier heart. Makes people interact with each other because people can see and talk while they're walking, like in architecture in FTOE. However, remember that not everybody would be able to do that. And I think it's our responsibility as designer to remember that not everybody can do that. So if you have to design an atrium and with staircase, remember that next door or nearby, there should be say a lift that can bring people up and down if they're unable to use staircase. Also, simple things like having clear limit as to where the end of this beautiful glass balustrade. You know, as an architect or a student or designer, we like to see glass facade and clean design and so on. But remember, in society, there are people who are afraid of height. They can have, you know, problems if they stand very close to the edge. So therefore, it is important to have some sort of clear boundary as to where people can stop and doesn't feel that they're not gonna fall down and so on. So just remember that you don't just design for people who are healthy and young, that there are different type of people in society. Providing safe access. I know probably in Indonesia, you don't see many people on wheelchairs. I think using wheelchairs in Indonesia probably is still perceived as a bit of embarrassment. But I'm sure with open society now that, you know, this is more acceptable. In Australia, I mean, you see people on wheelchairs quite a lot. So it is really important to make sure that people on wheelchairs can also enjoy the building, enjoy the built environment, enjoy outdoor space as much as people who do not use wheelchairs. Feeling of security, whether it's through, you know, having windows that can be closed totally, but still allowing people to have access to outside air. And I think now, in the context of COVID, I noticed that people started looking at COVID safe design. So again, it's probably about distance. So, you know, the design of like spaces like offices or studio may have to change in the future. I don't know. This is something that students probably would be interested to look at these aspects. Buildings that really ensuring fresh air, ensuring natural ventilation, ensuring light coming to the building and so on. But once again, in particular, materials that you use in the building and so on. Again, ensuring that people can use the building safely. So it's not just about energy conservation, it's about ensuring people can use the space. And I don't think I need to talk about more about this. I know in architecture, FTOE, the issue of culture has been, you must have learned this from first year. So just as a reminder again, making sure that we remember that cultural identity needs to be maintained, needs to be fostered. We're all different, but we all in a way the same. We need to have same access to good environmental quality. So back to what we started before. I think the question in terms of social sustainability, the question we want to ask is what sort of society that we're looking at here? Who are the people that we're talking about? Is it just a client? Is this just people who pay us to design their building? Or is it the surrounding as well? I hope you agree that by now that what I'm talking about here is we're not just looking at the client, but the surrounding as well. And when we intervene in the built environment, that hopefully our intervention will benefit people, not just our client, but the wider society. And I like to use this very old project. It was completed when I almost finished my undergraduate study at UI, and I was involved in, I mean, as a, what is it called, practical training in PT Griantara with Pak Michael. I was helping out drawing this. So this is a project in Samarinda, and many of you probably know this project. So it was back in the 84, 87, I believe. So the area used to be very sort of, it's kind of swampy area, but with very dilapidated kumuh kind of market, public market, traffic jam everywhere. So the governor or mayor at the time challenged his son, Didi Swandi, I think that's his name, because his son just came back from United States studying. And I think he could be studying urban design. I'm not 100% sure. But he said, you know, what can we do in this this site? Because they wanted to improve it. There was an idea, you know, put new shopping mall, put new building and so on. And luckily, this guy had a good friend, which is Antonio Ismail. Some of you probably know, very well-known architect. And Antonio Ismail, instead of saying, okay, let's just build all these new buildings, what he did was actually incorporating all the vendors, you know, the tukang jualan and so on that was there, excuse me, instead of just evicting them, throwing them away, he said, no, we have to embrace them. So it actually working with the locals, with the private sector, as well as the local community, what he did was he designed different types of shops or stores. So the existing vendors that used to be, you know, having, I don't know, like jualan sate or whatever on the side of the road, or all these tukang kelontong or whatever, he incorporated this place where they can have a little stall, and they paid it back through a corporation system, so system koperasi, so they can have the smaller stall, and then a bit the one that can be can pay a bit more, they can have a bit larger stall. So this building is divided by 4. You can have sort of smaller, oh sorry, slightly larger stall, or people who can rent or buy a larger space, they can have a ruko, they can have a shop house. So it's a combination of different type of vendors. And apart from that, they also have a public space where people can have performance and so on. And it became a place that brings or brought pride to Samarinda. It became like a center of Samarinda. And it's really this collaboration between the government, the private sector, and the local community that make this happen. The project then received Aga Khan Award in '87, and you can read the citation on this. So it's really an example. And again, it wasn't mentioned, it wasn't at the time, you know, the term social sustainability in architecture probably wasn't popular or hadn't started. But to me, it really is reflecting this aspect of sustainable architecture and sustainable development. Unfortunately, the project or this area was burned down so many times. They have fire every now and then. However, I just read it online today that actually early in this year, some business groups tried to revitalize this area, and it started again as a center for culinary. So there's a lot of new cafes and so on. They start to rebuild it. Unfortunately, obviously, as you know, COVID happened, so now it kind of slowed down again, and not many people went there, but hopefully it would just continue. So have a look at that. I think that's a great example. This one is quite the opposite in terms of the size. So this is an example in Adelaide, and it's a new development in the center of Adelaide, built by Uniting Communities. Uniting Communities is a non-profit organization. What they did, they actually providing service to older people, so aged care. They provide service to or services to people with disability, and also drug addicts, so people who are on drugs, with drugs problem, and they provide services to those people. What usually happens in Australia, and probably also in Indonesia, that all of these people are marginalized, right? You never put nursing homes in the center of the city. You never put disability care in the center of the city or in the center of, you know, an expensive development. You never put drug addicts in this. You don't want to see them, right? You're scared of them, or you think, oh, they're bad people, put them away. What they try to say is all of these people, they're in an unfortunate situation, but it doesn't mean we cannot put them in a place where other people can also enjoy, or they should be able to access facilities that are enjoyed by people with no issues. So in the building, they have retirement residence, they have apartments for people with disability, accessible facility. They also have function center that everybody can use, everybody in society can use. Then they have commercial leasing, so they have restaurants, they have shops, they have offices as well. So the way they organize it, so the people, older people live on the top, and then there's the disability services, there's commercial leasing, there is a cafe and community services on this level. It looks like a very posh development, but the area that I think is really, I mean, the retirement villages, the retirement units are rather expensive in my view, but to me, what is very commendable is the fact that they embrace all the services that otherwise usually are put aside. You know, people don't want to see people on drugs, but they try to embrace them and provide a good facility so people feel good about it. So the building just received a Good Design Award because it is allowing this human nature relationship, fostering social connectedness between each other and cohesion through design, accessibility, so every space in this area is accessible. People on wheelchair can access and so on. People who are blind can access. It recognizes diversity of the cultural group, and obviously with the quality of the indoor environment, it improves the quality of life as well, and also ensuring safety and security. The building itself also has a good environmental rating. So I just don't want to put it here because that was not the focus, but at the same time, the building actually receives the highest environmental rating scheme in Australia. So we have the Green Star rating scheme as well. All right, so basically, I think I'll just skip this. I just want to say that, yes, make sure that when you design, it's not just about looking at the environment, but the socio-economic, contextual, and cultural consideration. So the question is, how are we going to do this? So in the next few slides, I'm just going to give you a few tips. Sorry, I'm exceeding an hour. So Ibu Ova, should I stop or should I continue?
What do you think, Prof? Yeah, because we
It's all
already
right?
like 4 minutes.
Okay. Is it, sorry, should I continue or should I stop?
If you will, you can continue still.
Oh yeah, okay, sure. I'm continuing, that's fine. Right. So in the design process, so how do we make sure that we address social sustainability? So apart from looking at those 8 dimensions in the design, I think what's really important is, as a designer, we talk to people, obviously. So not only that you do interviews with the client, which is the normal thing, you know, the client would come to you and say, could you design something? Or whether it's a government office, whether it's organization, of course you talk to them. And then you do survey, of course, you survey. But remember that you don't just survey the site where the building is gonna be. I think you need to survey the surrounding, even, you know, a few kilometers away from the building. See how the new development is gonna impact the surrounding and vice versa. And when you do survey, don't forget, talk to the people. Don't just take photos because, you know, I remember when being a student, we like taking photos, taking cool buildings and so on. But we rarely talk to the people. Don't forget, we do need to talk to the people. And also, I guess, doing community consultation. So make us sort of special meetings with people in the community, different groups of people, female, male, different cultural background, socioeconomic background, and so on, making sure that we understand the context. And obviously, not every project you would do this, but even if you design a house for a client, I think there's nothing wrong trying to talk to the neighbors if you can, or trying to talk to, you know, whatever people who pass by, see what they think, see what they feel about that environment. Is there any tool that can help us do this? Now, I'm sure all of you would know in Indonesia is also part of the, there's a Green Building Council, Indonesia, which is part of the International Green Building Council. And they come up with green building certification, which is in other countries, you probably would have learned, like in America, there's a certification called LEED, and then in the UK, there's something called BREEAM. In Singapore, there's Green Mark, and there's Green Building Index in Malaysia. And Indonesia, there's something called Greenship. And Greenship really is looking at environmental sustainability. So looking at site development, energy, water conservation, materials, resource, air quality, and building and environment management. But as you can see, they don't measure any of the social dimension except perhaps some aspect of the indoor environment quality. So aspect of quality of life, such as indoor environment quality, yes, it measures, but Greenship doesn't measure issues on equity, human nature, coexistence, recognition of different groups, participation, other than just the stakeholders, just the client. It doesn't measure social cohesion, safety, security, or cultural identity. So I think you need to go beyond Greenship. I think that's my message. There's an alternative. I don't know if you have heard, there is another assessment tool called WELL Building Standard. And there are 10 concepts of that. They measure air, so air quality, water access, water quality. It starts to address more than just the environment. It addresses outdoor space, whether it provides nourishment, so food to people, access to light, it accesses movement, spatial movement. It assesses thermal comfort, just like Greenship, and sound, materials, but also not just the quantity, but in terms of its quality and also impact on well-being. And then it also look at the impact on mind and relationship with the community. So it starts to address a lot more aspects that relates to social sustainability, although it doesn't necessarily address the issue of safety, security, and cultural identity. There's another tool that you can look at, and I'm just showing this, and you can use it for almost like a checklist, I guess, if you're not really using it for a real project, but at least the parameters that they propose can help you think about the social aspect of sustainability. So Living Building Challenge is another tool that you can look at, and you can look at the criteria here. It starts to address more and more about the people. So apart from the normal thing, energy, water, light, and so on, it really addresses things that would affect well-being. So healthy environment, interior, access to nature. So addressing relationship between human and nature. Materials, again, is not just about impact on reducing energy, but impact on the economy, impact on whether or not it creates what they call positive waste, so reusing waste and eliminating waste. It addresses equity, it addresses beauty. So biophilia, it included in here, relationship with nature, green space, and so on, as well as inspiration. So there's a lot more looking at the aspect of well-being, social sustainability. But again, it doesn't specifically look at safety and security. There is another tool that you might want to look at. That's a standard. This is actually developed in Canada. They try to make it more international. Have a look. I'm not saying that this is all relevant, but have a look. They look at access points, wayfinding, signage, pathway, barriers, fencing. So things that we talked about before in terms of safety and security. And I think in combination between Living Building Challenge and Safe Design Standard, I think it starts to improve our understanding about things that we can look at in terms of social aspect of sustainability. Then what happened when the building has been built? How do we know that it has addressed social sustainability? One way of looking at it, and I'm not sure if Ibu Ofa is going to talk about it in her class, is something what we call post-occupancy evaluation. Some of you probably would know this. Basically, it's evaluating design in a systematic and rigorous way after it has been built, operated, and occupied. I have to say, very rarely architects or architecture office would do this because A, it costs a lot of money, And I have to say honestly, based on my relationship with some architects here, not every architect want to know if the building that they design works or not, because it can pose other problems. But in my view, we can only know if the building performs as we intended, not just environmentally, but more in the point of view from the user of occupants, if we do post-occupancy evaluation. Because it can provide feedback so we can improve the building that we're looking at, but also provide lessons to inform new development or design. So, when we design a building, we plan on it, we did research, then we collect the data to ensure we know what we're doing, we design it, we construct it, and then once it's done, this is when the POE start, we review the outcome, then we provide recommendation, and we implement it either in that building or it inform the exploration for a new design. So only after we do post-occupancy evaluation can we find out whether the building really works or not, whether it's environmentally or socially. And this is an example of a post-occupancy evaluation that one of my students did for her PhD, where she looked at the internal quality in terms of occupant satisfaction of office buildings in Adelaide, looking at buildings that are considered environmentally sustainable and buildings that are just what we call conventional. So she looked at different aspects, and this is some of the example of what she did. So she looked at comfort, thermal quality, noise, lights, productivity, health, and so on. And doing this, you can tell, for example, that people in the green buildings, so the higher the ranking, the further it gets to this edge. So this is the score is 3.8, whereas in the conventional building, some people feel less healthy than in green building. Whereas in the green building, a lot of people are not happy with the noise. A lot of people in the green buildings in Adelaide at least think that the building is very noisy compared to the conventional building. And you know why? Because a lot of buildings, as you can see, it has good in terms of lighting. So the lighting is pretty good. But in a lot of cases, in many green buildings, because they want to make sure the building get a lot of daylight, they don't have partitions. So you can just hear people coming from everywhere talking. So once again, this is just one aspect of the social sustainability. Is only one out of the 8 dimensions, but you can address it. The other one, and this is my last part of the lecture, is something what we call using citizen science. So the first, this POE, this post-occupancy evaluation here, is asking people who use the building. But we can also find out from people who are not using the building, people who are just, outside, people who just want to, people who are in the neighborhood, and we might want to know what they think about a certain development or certain spaces in the city. Citizen science is not necessarily just for built environment. As a matter of fact, citizen science is actually a term used to involve citizens in a scientific project. Most of the time, citizen science is used in natural sciences, like some scientists want to know how many frogs live in some forests, or want to know if certain fish is still alive. So they ask, rather than the researchers go around finding the data, they ask people, go to your neighborhood, count the frogs, count the number of frogs, count the number of fish, or whatever. In our context, we use citizen science to find out how people feel in terms of their own neighborhood, so that we could improve our neighborhood or our building because we got feedback from people. So what we did, we developed survey using mobile phone where people can participate. And what they do, because everybody now has mobile phone, they can take photo. We know where the location is, so they can survey, let's say, around their house. We ask them about, aesthetic and safety, noise, lighting, whatever, so you can develop any type of questions. And when they do the survey, once they answer the survey, we know where they are. So we can have 20 people going to, 10 different locations. All of a sudden you get feedback from, 200, 300 locations, and you get data quite instantly. Because when they're around, they take a photo and then they put a comment. They said, oh yeah, this area is very dreadful, or this area is very nice and not safe, or safe, and so on and so forth. So it's really a rich idea, rich method to find out or to involve future residents, future users, or only viewers to be part of the design process, thus empowering them. We don't discriminate. They can be old, they can be young, they can have different social economic status. In our case, as long as they get mobile phone, because we need to use their location, and then they can provide feedback to us, which is valuable for the design process. If you want to know about this project, you can have a look at this paper. So that's my final slide, just to say that, yes, we're talking about the ecology in terms of sustainability, but really what we're looking at here is the issue of social sustainability, but they're all part of what we call the circle of sustainability. So, terima kasih. That's all from me. If you have, sorry for running nearly 20 minutes late, but hopefully that was useful.
Wow, this is very amazing lecture, Prof. Ira. And I'm sure that if everybody among us, we already implement it in our life, it will be very, very huge impact we're going on. Okay, thank you so much again, Prof. Ira. Actually, the discussions about social sustainability itself is because normally when we're talking about sustainability, we're talking about green building, we're talking about environmental impact and so on and so forth. But often we miss to talk about the human itself, the motor. We are, as a human, we are the most painful for the earth, for example, like that. Correct. So from this lecture, I put some notes here that actually the presence of the people is very important, not only the design. Yeah, when you mentioning about fear, right? So it's not only about the lighting, the circular things, but when the presence of the people there, then maybe our fears get less. Yeah. And then the second one is about, this is very sensitive. It's about ensuring people that everybody can use it, because we have different culture. We have also different possibilities, abilities in our physical conditions. Yeah. And the most thing that I really like to underline in this lecture is that we have different definition about sustainability. It's about creative adaptation to ecology. This is very, very insightful. Okay, so Prof. Ira, may I also expect like 1 or 2 questions from the audience?
Yeah, it's okay. Yeah. The lecture is 1 hour, supposed to be 1 hour, but so be over. But no, I'll be happy to stay for questions, of course.
Thank you. So now I will invite the questions from the floor. Please, if there's somebody wants to have questions, you can also mention it in Bahasa or in English. Supposed to be, yeah. It's okay.
Bahasa Jawa juga boleh.
Bahasa Jawa juga boleh. Okay.
No, I can't speak Javanese. Silakan.
Really? Okay, please, we will wait. Please do not take so much time because the time is running. Anyone for the questions?
Bu Ova, can I ask questions? Okay. Hello, Miss Ma'am. My name is Mirta Kairunisa, and I'm from the Professional Program of Architecture. I really intrigued that you put sustainability through the social and economic perspective, because in my mind, I always thought that sustainable architecture were only about the environment. So my question is how to focus the priorities that needed when designing public spaces for the community to achieve this sustainability. I mean, there are a lot of aspects such as inclusivity aspects, comfort aspects, and other human aspects that you have mentioned earlier, right? So is there any tips from you where to start prioritizing the aspects for us as soon to be an architect and the designer of the public spaces? Or should we stick to the sustainable building indicators that you've mentioned earlier? Yeah, thank you.
Very, very good question. Thanks, Mirta. I think, in my view, in real, so you're talking about studio project or real projects?
Both of them. I mean,
Both,
studio
okay.
project and soon to
Right.
be real project. Yeah.
Okay, so I think if it's, okay, let's start with the real project. In my view, you do need to have that discussion with whoever asks you to design it. So let's just say, if the municipality or, I don't know, kantor kelurahan, whatever, ask you to design public space in that area, I think you need to have that discussion and to say, okay, ma'am or sir, Pak, Ibu, what is your priority? Is it for people? Is it to reduce pollution? Is it whatever? Maybe they don't know, but maybe you need to start with that discussion. Maybe at the end of the day, it could be both. Now, there is something called multi-criteria assessment, which I think is very, so if you want to look at literature on multi-criteria assessment, it's basically a way to make a decision based on the weighting of the criteria. And I cannot say that, environment comes first or social comes first. It really depends on the context. I give you an example. For example, in where I live in South Australia, even in the environmental aspect, there could be different priorities. So South Australia in Australia is what we call the driest state in the driest continent. Australia is a very dry continent, and South Australia is the driest continent, the driest state. So in South Australia, water sensitive design is probably more priority. We have environmental issue, but because in South Australia, 51% of our energy comes from wind energy, so it's green energy. So we don't have as much energy issue anymore compared to most other states that rely on coal. So there's a lot of CO2 carbon emission produced from coal production. So if that was the issue in, so say Victoria or New South Wales, I think reducing carbon emission probably takes more priority than reducing water use because they got a lot of rain. We don't. So in our state, water is the first priority and energy probably second. Again, social aspect though within South Australia obviously depend on the area that we're doing this public space. Let's say there is an area with higher crime rate, there's area with a low crime rate. So again, for area with a high crime rate, probably reducing crime design that really help minimizing crime would be the priority compared to, say, where I live, where providing space for people together is more important because crime is not an issue, for example. So I don't think there is one answer on that. I think it really depends on the context. So in terms of, if you're talking about public spaces, now again, public spaces can be outdoor space, can be public building. If it's public building, probably at the end of the day, maybe the priority would be, it's hard to say. Again, it really depends on the context, whether is energy an issue there or not. Is minimizing energy an issue? For example, if you are designing a public space or public building, and the space or the area, the region or the area has limited energy sources. Just, let's say in a remote area, you try to design a gallery or visitor center, let's say in Sumba Island, okay? And there is limited electricity. So of course you have to design something that doesn't use a lot of energy, right? But that's just like a given, that's a given fact. But I think more importantly than designing a space that really embrace the cultural aspect, that really is for people, that really encouraging or including encouraging social cohesion and so on. So the energy is not a priority anymore. It's just a given thing. If it's in Jakarta, which one is more important? Energy? Well, again, if Jakarta is struggling because a lot of people, or there's a lot of buildings that use a lot of energy, then of course you have to do it, right? You have to do the energy part. But my point is, don't stop at energy, don't stop at environment, don't stop at that, because there is a lot more to that. I hope that answered the questions.
Yeah.
But I don't think, yeah, go ahead.
So we should like analyze the main issue on this site, then we could start from there, and then we could see the aspects that is more important, so we could actually prioritize it based on the issue. Right.
I would say so, and probably Kak Toga can jump into that too, because I think that's why, you know, even from first year, I believe that's what you do every time you design, right? You do site analysis. That's like a given thing. You have to do site analysis. But in site analysis, I think it should be more than just the tangible, the thing that you see, you know, water or access to sun and shading and traffic and so on. Because on the site or surrounding the site, there are people, right? So I think we do need to address people, because it really, I mean, the image that I showed before, and that was it was a real image, right? The hotel next to the slum area. It's very striking, and you see that a lot in Jakarta. I remember when I was a student, this is 4th year, and this was in, I don't know, you don't have the same course anymore now. We used to have a course called Permukiman. It was taught by almarhum Pak Bianpun. And one of the projects was we had to do survey to the slum area in Jakarta Barat, behind Tarumanegara. And it was an eye-opener, of course, because you know, you had to go through this, you know, kampung, and it really slum area. And I remember one house that we went to go to the house, the path or the pedestrian, not pedestrian, just like between buildings, the apa namanya, not jalanan, it's just gang. It's as wide as my shoulder. We had to go sideways. It was so narrow. And we got to this house, and it was a small 2-story house, I remember. And I remember this guy who owned the house. He used to work in Balai Kota. I remember that he was so proud that he worked in Balai Kota. He had this uniform. He showed it to us. And part of the interview, we had to ask, you know, how much you earn. And I remember he said, oh, I earn 20,000 rupiahs per month. And we thought, wow. And he said, oh, my son also works for Balai Kota, but because he's a bit smarter than me, he's a security, and he earned 40,000. It's amazing. And we thought, like, wow. And but really, that project is just to understand the society, because I think Pak Bianpun then the project was about, okay, if you have to revitalize or to rebuild that area, what do you do? So we come up with ideas and so on. At the time, of course, the issue of environmental sustainability was not really in the place. So it is really about the social issues, but it is really an eye-opener when you talk to people. And I'm sure Bu Efai, you still do, like, the architecture students still do projects in community now? You still do that, right?
We have community engagement program.
Yeah, good. Yeah. I think that is really important. So yeah, I think my point is, it is important to look at environment. Of course, it is our duty, I think, to make sure that our building doesn't cost the environment, that's, you know, broader environment, and creating negative impact. But I don't think we should stop there. I think, don't forget that. Yeah. First, the building has to be, the architecture has to be beautiful, right? You can't just design something that looks so ugly that people don't want to look at it or be in there. Just because it saves energy doesn't mean it's good for the environment. So I think fulfilling the spiritual well-being of people is as important as reducing environmental impact. I think that's the message I like to say.
Thank you so much, Miss.
Thanks, Mirta.
Okay, thank you for the questions, Mirta. So, Prof. Ira, it's already 2:30. As we.
That's all right. I'm be happy to talk. Doesn't matter.
Oh, okay.
No problem.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. Then I would like to invite one more questions. I think we have one questions here from.
Is there any question? Oh, in the chat.
Yeah.
Okay, let me just.
Ita, can you just talk?
I'd like to ask you about social dimension. It's not included in greenship assessment. How can we encourage the social dimension to be? Yes. Look, that is a very good question. So, how do you encourage that? I think you need to be involved with Green Building Council. Because look, it's not just a problem for Indonesia. So one of my PhD students from Malaysia that was her PhD, and I can send you her paper. So what she did was she looked at how can we include social dimensions in their green building assessment. So GB index is what Malaysia does. So what she did then, she did focus groups, she interviewed people, she did survey and so on, until she came up with the parameters. So she developed the indices or the parameters, and she developed the method to do it. She presented to Green Building Council Malaysia, and she's part of Green Building Council Malaysia now. I don't know how much impact she had made, but what she did then, she made a comparison. So she looked at a building that was rated very high with Green Building Index. And let's say it's got the highest star. I don't know what the term is. Let's say gold.
Platinum.
Gold rating. What is Green Building Index? I don't know what is the highest one.
Platinum.
Platinum, is it? Okay. And then she applied the tool that she developed. And that building, once you start including social aspects, it's no longer at the top, because it doesn't incorporate issues like what I just talked about before. And she presented it to Green Building Council. She presented it in conferences as well. Whether or not they would implement, I'm not sure, because the thing is with the Green Building Council, they have to follow whatever the International Green Building Council is doing. Now, in America, for example, it's the same thing. It's called LEED, and then in Australia, it's called Green Star. However, things change. So Green Star now has started incorporating or like working together with WELL building standard, so that when people or a building is being rated with Green Star, they also want WELL, because Green Star doesn't assess well-being. So a lot of times, once you get the word, I think our job as academics to, send a message. Maybe you should write an article, Chipta. Maybe you should, whatever. Talk to potential clients. Once the clients see the benefit of having the social aspect being assessed, they would demand it. So you prepare the way of doing it, or simply adopt, let's say, WELL. So what I'm trying to say is, in Australia, for example, the property council or building councils for commercial buildings, a lot of the clients now requesting WELL to be done as well, because they understand that Green Star is not enough. They want to address well-being. So I think my suggestion is try to be active with Green Building Council, write articles, write critiques in magazine, in I don't know, newspaper, or write a blog, put in your social media saying, hey, a green building is not necessarily sustainable because it's only addressing one aspect of sustainability. We need to look at other aspects. And the more you talk about it, I think the more people realize, and then the demand will start to happen. So I think you should be the pioneer on this. That's my suggestion. Yeah, okay. I'm always, to be honest, I'm always cynical. Not cynical, but kind of critical with, I mean, it happens here. It happens in here too, that people think, oh, just because it's got 6 Green Star rating or platinum, whatever, it must be good. Well, it's good for one aspect. It's not necessarily good for everything. So yeah.
But
Depends on
the world needs such people. Don't worry, Prof. Ira.
yes, we need people like you.
So thank you so much, Prof. Ira. Maybe I would like to give one opportunity to Pak Toga. Pak Toga, as me and Pak Toga are actually managing this class. Pak Toga,
Right.
do you have comments or questions, Pak Toga, to Prof. Ira? It's still mute, Pak.
This lecture of the social aspect in the sustainability is actually my concern for a long time, because most of the understanding of sustainability goes to the technology, the architect, the buildings, but forgetting the social, especially social behavior, because a green building can successfully being operated or success when it is in operation. It depends on the people. If the people are not do not have the understanding of how green building works, and they don't have this behavior which can actually optimize the green building with its technology, then it can be a waste. So really, we have to expand our study, or the student study, that the understanding of the sustainability should also include the social aspect, and that's important. And this lecture, it's very nice, it's very good. Yes, that's my comment.
Thanks, Pak Toga. I do have a question to all of you, if anybody wants to answer. I think one of the problems that we have, or challenge that we have, because we often focus on the building, as Pak Toga said, and we try to make sure, everything works and so on. The problem is when we don't involve people in the process of making the building, they probably don't know, right? So they don't understand that this is how they should operate the building. The other problem that I have, my question is this. A lot of buildings you probably would have heard, with smart system. So they put smart system, so the window will open when the temperature outside is, cool enough to bring fresh air. So then they have smart lighting. So to reduce energy, they use smart system. So when there's no, with motion sensor. So when there's nobody, the light would turn off, and then when there's somebody, the light would turn on. But to me, as a result of that, people are not engaged with the building, right? They just use it and they think, oh, well, it's just turn on. I don't have to turn off. I don't have to turn on. I don't have to open the window, because the building is doing it all for us. So on one hand, it's good for the building, it's good for the environment, but is it really educating people? Isn't that one of the problems? We make things so easy for people to use. It doesn't, it's like same argument about, making people so comfortable in their environment, they don't go up anymore. They don't stand up, they sit down, they lie down all the time. And as a result, probably more of us having heart problem now because we don't move a lot. So what should we do? Do we make the building really comfortable for people? Or should we make them suffer a bit so they get up and do something and they're engaged with the building? And they use less energy probably because they do things manually. In the context of modern architecture, how should we do it? Any comment?
I have a comment on that.
Great.
Yes.
Please.
Veronica. Maaf, mungkin pakai bahasa Indonesia aja karena saya juga nggak tahu.
Ya.
Itu sebenarnya kalau misalkan saya lihat, kalau misalkan kita mencoba pakai analogi ya, kita analogikan sustainabilitas itu sebagai sebagai dalam skala orang berganti dari pakai gelas plastik ke gelas kertas, atau misalkan bungkus styrofoam ke bungkus kardus. Yang saya menjadi fenomena menarik adalah dulu orang pakai kardus melihat itu sebagai sesuatu yang murah, tapi sekarang menjadi sesuatu yang sangat exciting ketika orang memakainya. Artinya, kenapa bisa begitu? Karena sekarang orang mendesain kardus dengan sesuatu yang lebih menarik, entah itu dengan desain grafisnya, sistem membukanya, ya di balik dari kemudahannya juga ada bagaimana seorang itu engage dengan ketika dia membuka apa yang ketika misalkan dibuka dengan ya kayak kita buka laptop gitu misalkan, ya sudah selesai. Tapi ada juga kan makanan yang ketika dibuka dengan kedua tangan, si makanan itu terangkat sehingga ada interaksi lebih di sana. Yang menjadi kunci menurut saya dari gimana orang itu mengengage sustainability adalah excitement, membangun excitement itu sendiri. Artinya gimana ngebuat sustainability dalam skala bangunan sebagai sesuatu yang fun, sebagai sesuatu orang yang ketika dia mengembrace sustainability sama seperti dia mengembrace form atau mengembrace misalkan material orang seperti itu. Jadi mungkin kalau dari menurut saya kuncinya di sana sih.
I think that's a great answer. I think that probably goes back to that definition of sustainable architecture, is that creative adaptation, right? That creativity needs to be there. That's very true. So that what I was going to say next is that, to be honest, I'm not a fan of what you call it intelligent building or smart building, that everything just comes smartly. I think there's a danger of relying on smart system because you don't engage with the people. You just make things so easy that people don't realize anymore, this engagement. But if you make it, so I'm not sure, maybe there is a creative smart system, but yeah, I think sometimes we just automate everything, make everything automatic, which is kind of the symbol of modern society. But I think there is a danger on relying on everything automation. I like your suggestion. You do it in a creative way, and something simple can become exciting. So yeah, to make sustainability or sustainable architecture happen in the right way, I think if you make that fun and interesting and creative, I think you can get a good outcome. That's great.
I think Prof. Ira, maybe I would also love to give comments maybe, because in relation to this pandemic, of course, Prof. Gunawan Cahyono already mentioned about redomestications, that people are already going back home, do everything at home, So maybe in this kind of way, we don't really depend on our transportation modes, our smart office, this kind of fancy things that we have in the previous time. But at the moment, we just stay at home, we are doing things at home, and suddenly we really depend on this fresh air, right? So maybe again, the clue is when we talk about this industrial 4.0, the message is the human activity, the human involvement is not really engaged. That's why they're moving to this 4.0, where the emphasizing is the human involvement itself. Maybe that would be the comment.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, look, I don't think anybody likes COVID, but I think it does bring, it rethinks, it makes us rethink about our life, our way of doing things. And in a way, it simplifies things.
Yeah.
And maybe that's what we should do. We've been doing things, making things unnecessarily. And now we still survive. And look, I meet with you.
Yes.
In these circumstances. If
we
this
don't have border.
We actually don't have border. So if this didn't happen, Ibu Ova is not gonna. I don't think she would have asked me to come to the lecture.
Maybe I would just like to ask my colleagues.
That's right. It's gonna cost you too much, right, to bring me there. So in a way, this is a good thing that we can still do good things with the simple things, and that's probably a good thing.
Yes, that's the lesson from the pandemic. Thank you so much again, Prof. Ira. We still have Pak Dalhar here. Pak Dalhar. Okay, Prof. Ira, I can see one student's raising hand. Is it okay?
Sure.
Okay, so please, Mas Yuri.
Ya, Bu, terima kasih, Prof. Veronica.
Just a second, sorry, I just want to find. Okay, Pak Mas Yuri, ya.
Terima kasih, Prof. Ini kuliah yang sangat menarik hari ini, saya rasa, karena lengkap sekali kami jadi dapat masukan tentang sustain. Ya. Tadi saya mendapat mungkin salah atau kesimpulan saya bahwa ternyata bahwa sustain ini ujung-ujungnya atau muaranya adalah tentang bagaimana kemudian create value bagi orang atau siapapun yang menempati atau gedung atau apapun yang dibuat sustain itu. Nah, seolah mungkin kita seperti ingin menghadirkan kembali sebuah keseimbangan lingkungan, kehidupan yang mungkin dulu itu hal yang biasa, gitu kan? Mungkin karena belum tumbuh sedemikian rupa itu menjadi yang biasa, tapi sekarang dengan perkembangan teknologi itu dihadirkan di kota, tentunya dengan di-enhance dengan teknologi. Dan tadi ada contoh yang menarik dari Prof. Veronica mengenai bagaimana ada profesional yang sedang meeting, ya, yang satu mungkin ada di depan laptopnya, yang satu ada di negara-negara lain. Sebaliknya tadi ada di desa yang mereka berkumpul di pelataran sawah begitu saja, gitu kan. Nah, kemudian ini kan sebuah sebuahnya perpindahan dari kebutuhan yang lalu kepada kebutuhan yang sekarang, kan memang ada perubahan kebutuhan manusia, tapi ujung-ujungnya sama, adalah create value, gitu kan. Nah, mungkin itu. Dan yang tadi juga saya cukup menarik adalah mengenai yang bagaimana mempertahankan yang tadi ada contoh Citra Niaga. Citra Niaga di Samarinda itu tahun, kalau nggak salah tahun 1986 atau 87. Nah, itu kan satu bangunan yang sustain, yang memang diharapkan sebenarnya boleh berlanjut, ya. Ternyata seiring dengan perubahan zaman, hari ini menjadi bukan sia-sia sih, tapi sudah tidak bisa menerima perubahan zaman sehingga ditinggalkan, dan sekarang mati suri, gitu kan, seolah-olah seperti itu. Nah, itu kira-kira bagaimana Prof bisa kita perubahan itu bisa sustain terus, gitu ya, bisa menangkap perubahan, karena begitu berubah orang ternyata nggak bisa lagi dia melanjutkan sistemnya itu, gitu.
True. Yeah. It's a good question. Pertama, I think it's about in terms of the people. I just want to say one thing, that yes, ujung-ujungnya it's about people, but as long as it doesn't cost the environment at the same time. So yes, it is about improving, ensuring people in this generation can live and can be fulfilled in terms of its quality of life, as we talked about before, but as long as it also doesn't cost the environment. I think that's really important. So it's not just for people for the sake of people. It needs to make sure, we need to make sure that it doesn't create a negative impact on the environment. I think that's one thing. So yes, my focus is about people, but it has to be in harmony with the environment. In terms of changing, it is very true. What I read, and it was quite sad when I read that, first, because of fire, so it got burned so many times, they tried to rebuild and so on. So what can you do? I mean, it got burned. And I think because what happened was a lot of the stalls, the kedai-kedai in the surrounding, they're made of wood, timber, so it's very easy to get burned. But you're right, society changes, and they said now people prefer to go to shopping mall with air conditioning. And it got left out. But this is the article that I read today, so I'm just reading it. So it was left out, but now apparently they started to have again, what was that? So back in 2017, it started to, they started to redevelop. And then early this year, sekelompok usaha kuliner berusia muda membuka gerai Citra Negara. And then all of a sudden, it becomes tempat nongkrong lagi. Sampai malam, setiap malam. Pemandangan 30 tahun silam terbuka lagi dan kembali hadir. Citra Niaga pun kembali menjadi barometer kaum milenial masa kini. So it got revitalized again. And it was revitalized by a different group, I guess, because they see, oh, there's potential of this. apparently it started again. However, obviously because of COVID, then nobody went there. So I think it's unfortunate. But you are right. And it did happen quite a lot. I did see there was a development in Adelaide. It was supposed to be a very sort of environmentally friendly housing development for low-income people. So it started off really great. You know, it's got community area, it's got sort of passive design principles and so on. So in the first few years, it was good. And then new people came in, they had a different view, it's got abandoned. It is true. I think sometimes this is just unavoided, and maybe it's something that hopefully somebody will pick up again and change it. Maybe as I think, who was saying it before? Lalu, you know, who was saying about being fun? I think if there is a way the design can be adapted or adapted so that it can, you know, it can be flexible enough. So it's not fixed. You don't design something just for that purpose. If a design can be, I mean, as a designer, as an architect, if you can be creative enough to think about what are the possibilities, you know, you are asked to design, let's say, I don't know, a post office, but maybe at the back of your mind, you should think about, okay, if post office is no longer necessary because people don't send letters anymore, what can we do with that building, with that design? So then maybe there should be a way to adapt that same building to be something else, so that it, you know, it follows the movement of people. I think it is hard. I mean, I can only say that kind of theoretically, because I do know a lot of buildings that were considered sustainable many years ago, and then people move, people change, and they just look back like, not important, not interesting. But on the other hand, there are buildings that last a long time and people still like it. And maybe we should learn what are the main aspects of those buildings. They don't declare it to be environmentally friendly. Just think about, you know, some of the notable buildings in Indonesia that people still go there all the time because of that sort of, I don't know whether it's spiritual values behind it. There's something about that building that people just keep going back for years and years and years without being declared to be sustainable. And maybe we should learn from those buildings that people still love. So it's never been abandoned. I mean, it probably, so what I'm trying to say is it's very dangerous to do something trendy, because when it's not a trend, then it just get left behind. But if we can, you know, be creative enough, either make it flexible or creative enough to think about what would last, then maybe that would stay for a long time. And I think we can learn from a lot of, you know, our traditional buildings. We can learn from a lot of the old buildings that people still visit because of the value of that building. And maybe that's what we need to learn, not the trendy looking building that after 20 years, people just hate it. Look, to be honest, when I just finished architecture, I did design something kind of trendy, which I don't want to tell you what it is because it's embarrassing, but because I don't think it's a good one. After a few years, I just look back, I thought, oh my God, what did I do? That is so bad. So anyway, don't do anything trendy.
Okay. Thank you, Mas Yuri, for the questions. Okay, Prof. Ira, we are about 5 minutes more into 3 o'clock, and we are already.
Yes, I know. That's
but
okay.
I understood this is very interesting discussion, and we know from the beginning 1 hour it will be never be enough. Okay, Prof. Ira, but don't worry, to all of the students here and also the colleagues, don't worry, because this lecture is only the first lecture that will be given from Prof. Ira, because this lecture is part of Sustainable Week from Architecture Sustainability. We will have the second session on 8th of October. Yeah, we will join the Building Information Modeling class Thursday, 8th of October from 10 o'clock to 11. let's see. Will it work until 11? I don't think so.
It's all right. I'll talk for an hour. I tried, and then we can use the rest for discussions.
Okay, thank you so much. That will be perfect.
Okay, no
Okay,
problem.
then. I
Okay.
think that's all for today, Prof. Ira.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for the students, for the colleagues, for everybody who comes here. Thank you so much. And we do for sure that you took a lot of things from this lecture for today. Okay, stay healthy, stay
so
happy.
much. Thank you. And Pak Toga, I'll wait for you to come back here one day, okay?
Okay.
Thank you everybody. Selamat sore, selamat siang. Sampai ketemu lagi.
Terima
Bye.
kasih semuanya. Terima kasih banyak Prof. Ira. Ya,
Thank
Assalamualaikum
you. Bye-bye.
warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Assalamualaikum
Selamat
warahmatullahi
siang.
wabarakatuh.
Makasih Pak Toga.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
Opa.